Same thing happened with the Rick.
That's what it was. I didn't actually read it closely, but I'm gonna have to go and clean all that out. Bunch of stuff in there. It's fire safe council meetings and whatnot. Okay. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're 6 after. I think I've got everybody written down as far as what I'm seeing both in house and on the Zoom. So I'll just do a quick roll call and everybody can chime in as they're called. So Terry Sheen here, Diana Sheen
here.
I'm Kelly Sheen, the district manager of the Trinity County Resource Conservation District and part of the collaborative facilitation team.
Jim Spear, also part of the collaborative facilitation team.
Okay, and then I have on Zoom Ross Molyneux.
Here.
Arnold Whitridge.
Here.
Larry Glass.
Here.
I saw Kristen Lark popped in. Are you there, Kristen?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Very good. Good morning. Jerry Cousins.
Here.
I saw Kenneth Baldwin join us earlier.
Yes, here.
All right. Welcome, Kenneth. Tara Jones.
I am here and my mic is working, so life is looking up.
Yay.
Awesome.
All right. And Sarah Akeridge, I saw joined us as well.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Sarah. Brian Taylor.
This is Ren Winter. Brian's not here today.
Oh, Ren. Okay. Welcome, Ren. Thank you. Heidi Carpenter Harris.
I'm here.
Hi, Heidi. Good morning.
Hi, how are you guys? Good, I hope.
Yep.
Good, good. And then I saw Chris Cole from the NRCS.
Here, good morning.
Thanks for joining us,
Morning.
Chris. And I think that's everybody. It looks like we have Xander Winders popping on in just a moment. So I'll note him. Good morning, Xander.
Morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And I think that's everybody that we've got on currently. So I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good to see everybody and glad you're here this morning. Maybe a quick agenda check. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look it over. Is there anything we missed or that you would like to propose that we add this morning?
I have one, Jim. It used to be that there was a check on the memory document that was put out. So I'd like to have a question on the memory.
Okay, we can add that under general business for, going forward.
Say that again, Kelly?
Yeah, you mean like having that under the general business, like at the beginning of the meeting as we're moving?
Yeah.
on?
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. We can add that.
Okay.
Would you like to do is there any comments on the collective memory?
I have one, that's why I put it back up.
Yep.
So I'm kind of curious, under the restructuring section, it says that the fuel break work group is a small group that meets to discuss controversial issues. So is that, is the shaded fuel break a controversial issue? I'm not sure what that references to.
Where exactly is that noted?
Well, it's on my printout, it's on the second page,
Right up there.
about the fifth line down.
Yeah. It starts over here.
Who made that statement?
Yeah, I don't know. Can't recall that.
He said if Glass stated.
So just check that. I'm not sure what that refers to. That's all.
Explain that the difference between the field break work group and the forestry subcommittee. Field break work group is a small. So these are, typically almost verbatim, word for word from what was actually said during the meeting. So I'm assuming.
Okay, I was just wanting to know what the reference was, so controversial issue.
I think it was just being, I think that from the way I read this, and I didn't review this, I reviewed the actual video, but I'm assuming that Larry Glass made a statement stating the difference between the field break work group and the forestry subcommittee is that the small group that meets a small group that just, meets to discuss controversial issues that come up and then agree upon a specific position. So I think he was just making a basic statement. Larry, would you concur with that?
Yeah, I think I was taking the historical view of it, and basically when there was controversy around actions in the forest, the issue went before the small group, and because of the diversity of the membership of the small group, we were able to come up with a common ground position and then bring it back to the whole group. That's what I was referring to.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, anything else on the collective memory minutes from the last meeting? Any other comments or edits? Hearing none, maybe circle back to the agenda check. Anybody else have any other agenda items that they would like to propose at this time?
Yeah, I would like to make some comments about this recent bust over in Trinity Pines at some point.
Okay.
Where do we want to put that, Kelly? Maybe concluding business.
Maybe we can touch on that during like other items and partner updates there towards the
There you
end.
go. Okay. You're on there, Kenneth.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Before we move on, get going on our agenda this morning. Hearing none, seeing none. First off, we have Heidi Carpenter Harris. As many of you know, she's one of our newly elected Board of Supervisors and has been designated as kind of the representative of the board for the Trinity Collaborative. So I thought it would be timely for her to come and just share a little background for those of you who aren't familiar with Heidi's background. She has graciously agreed to do that. So Heidi, you are officially up.
Thank you. I just want to first say that I'm really grateful for the consistency and the sustained effort by the Trinity Collaborative. I know that there's been times when it has risen, it's ebbed and flow in interest, and I'm always grateful for those long-standing, consistent efforts that we all benefit from in the long run. So first of all, as Jim stated, my name is Heidi Carpenter Harris. I am the current District 4 supervisor for the Board of Supervisors, and I have a long background in natural resources. My bachelor's degree is from Humboldt State in Rangeland Resource Science, and I worked alongside Jim actually at the NRCS inside and outside the agency for roughly 20 years. And when I say inside, I mean I was a direct employee of the USDA NRCS, and outside I served as a technical service provider and under agreement contracts. So a lot of experience with the NRCS, and ended my career with them as the district conservationist for Trinity County. I since then obtained a master's degree in organizational leadership, and I'm a graduate of class 43 of the California Ag Leadership Development Program. I've spent several of the last years really focusing on legacy land stewardship planning and leadership development within the community itself, mostly around ranching, but also just with that community level efforts to help people really think about legacy planning, not only for their properties, but just for their life in general. I have been asked for years to serve on the Board of Supervisors, and this year I said yes, and it worked out, so here I am. I'm looking forward to utilizing my background in natural resources to represent the board to the collaborative. I have experience with working on Joint Chiefs projects when I was the district conservationist in Weaverville there, and I'm very familiar with many of you. So some of this stuff is old news to you, but for some, maybe need to know that. So anyway, my hope is to support the collaborative to the best of my ability, and to give full strength of the support of the board to projects, and work with you guys to bring that information forward so that if needed, the Board of Supervisors can add our voice to the work and the efforts that are on the ground. I think it would be really helpful, since I'm not sure how many folks on the current board right now are really familiar with the collaborative. So after you folks hear this request and let me know if it's something you're open to, I would ask that the board put on the agenda an update from the collaborative, if that's something that the collaborative would be willing to do, just to kind of give a little bit of background, freshen up the knowledge within the community as well as the county, and just let us know what you're working on right now and how we might be able to support you in that. I think it also would be a really good way to help the board support any of your success indicators that you may have set up for yourselves to say, this is what success looks like to us, and this is what we have achieved, and this is what we're working on, and this is what we need some additional support for on. I'd be happy to be the voice that requests those types of updates to the board, and I also would be happy to support you while you're doing those. But most of all, I guess, now that you know that I'm here and you know that I have a background in natural resources and you know that I'm willing, my question to you is, what does support look like to the collaborative, so that I don't just make assumptions of what I think, but that I hear directly from you all what that support looks like, so that I can best facilitate being a buttress to the programs that you're working on. So that's me. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I live in Salyer up on the mountain, and I'm from the dirt, as my family has always said, been here for upwards of 7 generations. So I love this county and I love the ground that we live on, so, and the people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Heidi. Any questions for Heidi? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Thanks again, Heidi, for your report, and look forward to working with you.
Okay, happy to. Bye-bye.
Okay, up next we have
Excuse me, I couldn't get the command done. This is Jerry.
Okay.
Heidi, are you going to be able to kind of consistently attend the collaborative meetings?
Yes, sir. That's my intention.
Great.
As you know, we have lots of meetings, and so I'm working with Jim and Kelly to make sure that I know when they're coming and where they're going to be. And my intentions are to attend the meetings to stay abreast of what you're working on and be there in the space.
And when you talked about updates, are you thinking of written updates to you to pass on to the board, or real-time presentations at board meetings? What were your thoughts about how that works?
Well, I personally think that a in-person pictures, the whole 9 yards presentation to the board, just to kind of freshen the knowledge of what people know about the collaborative, and to bring the current board up to sync with what the collaborative is working on and what your goals and objectives are, and how we can, push energy into what you're working on. So to start off with, I think a presentation would be
Maybe
great.
a suggestion about that. Jim and I briefly talked about this, that Tara does updates from Forest Service. Tara, how frequently do you go before the Board of Supervisors for updates?
I go once a month,
Once a month?
usually the second meeting of the month.
Okay, so I wonder if it's a real-time presentation, if the collaborative, if Tara would be willing to kind of just follow her, a short presentation on, since we're so connected on projects and
Yeah,
discussions.
from my point of view, Jerry, I would really appreciate that. That'd be great.
I don't know who would want to do it, maybe facilitation team or maybe a different face every time, just so the board sees the broad representation that the collaborative has created. So
My thinking is that the facilitation team could work with members of the actual collaborative, but I think it would be more important or more meaningful coming from, you know, the members of the collaborative itself to some extent. It would be my opinion, but we're willing to help out, certainly.
So Kelly, how about if, or Jim, just send out an email with that thought and see who's willing to stand up? And Terry said it was the second meeting of each month?
Yeah, that's the one I've been going to routinely,
Okay.
is the second meeting
Okay.
of every month.
Well, we can work with Heidi about making sure that that's actually agendized properly, and then
Okay.
because it'd be good to have it like as a separate agenda item, I assume, right, Heidi?
Yes, within the information report out portion of the meeting, it would be best to have your own title space, yes, agendized, and then to make sure that we'll work through the formalities of it with getting it on the agenda and the amount of time you think you might need, and all of that, so that we fit it into a meeting where you're not going to be rushed and we're not going to be overwhelmed with the length of the meeting. So we'll work out the details, but I do believe that a in-person presentation with perhaps some imagery of the projects that have been worked on and the level of collaboration that the Trinity County Collaborative brings all the agencies together would be really a nice information piece.
Great. So yeah, we'll work with you, Heidi, on making that part of it happen. We'll reach out to essentially the voting members and sort of raise that issue and then basically sort of set up a time frame. Heidi, did you have an idea of how frequently you would like to get reports from the collaborative? Like monthly or quarterly or?
Well, I'm open to whatever, I don't want it to become a burden. So maybe quarterly would be nice, because then that way, we would be able to stay abreast of what you're working on. And I think that through those pieces of information, it would keep our activity and our ability to speak into the process and to be part of the, moving things forward. It would keep everyone up to date. And I think the more that we can share progress and struggle, if that comes into the storyline, the more you'll gain momentum, from the support of the whole board. So quarterly probably would be good if that works, for you guys. If it becomes cumbersome and, not good for you, then we can rediscuss that. But does quarterly sound good to you? Do you think that's a fair request or no?
Well, yeah, but maybe we'll just put that out to those that are on the call this morning. Any input? We will, take Jerry's advice and get an email out. That's probably a better way to give folks time, to think through. But any initial thoughts from the other members present this morning, or on the? Okay, we have one here. Yep.
Hi, Heidi. I'm Diana Sheen. And I possibly have some imagery that I will send to you. I will look up your email, okay? Because I try to get to most all the meetings. So
You can work,
Out on the field, yes.
you can work with us for like presentation.
Oh,
imagery and all
first?
that stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
And then we
Okay.
can bring the presentation then to the, like, for the report. So
All right,
that would be great. One.
that's all I
Yes, thank you.
hear. Thank you.
Anybody else have thoughts on this recommendation by Heidi that the collaborative begin to commit to making reports to the full Board of Supervisors? Again, we'll get that out to an email. Just want to make sure there's not any immediate thoughts. Not seeing it.
There's a hand.
Oh,
Arnold has
there's
his
Larry.
hand up.
Okay, Larry, go.
Go ahead, Arnold first.
Oh, Arnold. All right. I didn't see his hand.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Heidi, I wonder if you could just spend 1 or 2 minutes saying what kind of work you do with legacy land. Is it conservation easements? Is it will planning? What do you do?
So, so that's a portion of my private business, just so you know that has nothing to do with my role on the board, but it's what I do within my own company. So I predominantly, one of the things I noticed while working on landscapes was the human factor played an enormous role in the ability for the land to move forward. The land can never tell a lie. It will always tell you exactly what the people value who live and work on it. You can see that in every day. We see the scars of what was once valued, and now we work to try to remedy those. And then we move into new actions that create new impacts on the landscape. So the legacy of humanity is bore out on the impact to the landscapes and also the improvements to the landscape. So one of the things that I try to do when I work with large families, landowners, or even small landowners, is help them understand that their legacy is beyond what they leave as an individual, but it's what they leave on the landscape as well, and help people to how to intentionally plan for a positive legacy to be left on their landscape, even if it's a place that they're going to sell. But so in some regards, it always ends up in the will and trust and that component of it. But I try to help people build mindset planning. So when they go into that will and trust process, that they really are fully engaged with what they hope they are leaving behind and what they would like to see other people receive as they leave behind their legacy for the next generation, or even just to their community as a whole.
Thank you. Good.
Larry.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that what's worked in the past with supervisors who've regularly attended the collaborative is that they've gone back to the board, reported what the collaborative was discussing that was of interest to the board, and then occasionally members of the collaborative would come and appear before the supervisors to answer questions. Seemed that worked pretty well to keep the board, in the past at least, informed of what was going on with the collaborative. So I would suggest something like that, with Heidi giving regular sort of updates to the board, and then occasionally somebody from the collaborative appearing before the supervisors to answer questions if the board has any. That's my suggestion.
So I would give my report out from my attendance to the meetings, every board meeting, if I had a meeting with just a portion of the collaborative, and then with the report out from the meeting with the full collaborative. And that would be something that I would do every meeting that there was activity. However, since there has been a space and time since there's been some activity between the Board of Supervisors and the collaborative, I think that just kind of an overall general presentation to freshen the minds of both the board and the community, and just let people kind of have a freshening of the understanding of what the collaborative is and what we're doing, and then just really, I think, ignite some greater interest with the board as a whole.
All right. Any other comments, questions? So one other, suggestion that Heidi made was a reference to success indicators. I think there is some reference to that in your bylaws, the collaborative bylaws. I don't know that those success indicators have ever been developed. But again, food for thought. Maybe Kelly and I will include that in our email to get some input or feedback on that, but that might be a worthy endeavor as well to and might assist in kind of formulating some of these reports and give some track record or accountability relative to the collaborative efforts.
Yeah, and that's been something that's been actually requested from some of the agency conversations that I've had, that, that it would probably be helpful to have some level of quantifiable sort of, measurable, like progress, noted in some fashion. So that's probably something that maybe we can inquire about also with that email.
Yep. Okay, any other final thoughts, comments, questions on this topic? Once again, thank you, Heidi, for your report.
Yes, thank you for having me, and you'll see a lot of me from now on, I'm sure.
Good.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Heidi.
it.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi.
Yep, I'll stay on, but I'll close my face out.
All right. Not seeing any other hands up there. All right. Moving on. So up next, we've got reports on the most recent field trips. First, the April 21st High and Palm, and then May 5th, Bowerman Ridge. So who wants to start us off on reporting out on these field tours? Not seeing any volunteers.
Guessing by the silence, you guys were waiting me out. So.
You're the fallback there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can start with the High and Palm field trip, since we did that one first. And I really want to thank everyone for, you had asked me with this wildfire crisis strategy, what did I need? And I needed to be able to get more field trips in and just react, be a little more nimble and get out to the field a little more quickly. And the High and Palm one was our regularly scheduled meeting, and I appreciated the Fire Safe Council there making themselves available, and thought it was a really good field trip. We got some good feedback. We worked through some treatment options. And it was also good that was one of the first meetings that I took some more of our staff to, so they could just see how we work together. And I thought that was really important. I know some of the field trips in the past have been very scripted by the agency. And we would sort of bring an army of people and really dictate which stops we took and all of that. And I appreciate that we're not doing things that way anymore. So that was my feedback. It was really important for me that some members of our staff get to see how we work together and look at things in a very front end collaborative manner. And that was really helpful for me. So I got a lot out of that meeting as far as looking at possible treatments and areas that we may have needed to include, and some improvements to be made for the scoping. So that was my take on it, but I'm definitely interested. I want to hear what all of you thought about the field trip as well.
All right. Anybody have any follow-up comments on the High and Palm field trip? Everyone's quiet.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. I thought it was a well-done field trip. I thought it gave me a much better understanding of the new plan, because I didn't like the old plan, but the new plan's much better. And I think it addresses a lot of the community concerns there. And it also protects the environment at the same time. So I thought it was a very good field trip and very enlightening.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else? Okay, we will assume silence means they liked what they saw, or for those that participated. Final call on High Palm before we move on to Bowerman Ridge. Okay, seeing none. How about Bowerman Ridge? Anybody have any comments, questions, input on BowermanRidge?
Well,
this
I'll
was-
comment on it.
All right,
I thought it was,
you're up.
what?
Go ahead, you're up.
Ooh. Oh,
Kenneth.
okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. Sorry. Yeah, I thought it was a great field trip, and I really liked the project. I think Xander had a lot to do with the making that project, and it seemed to me like it was a really good one. There's areas that's going to be. I'm still scratching my head on how they're going to do the logging because it's pretty steep and sparse timber, but I appreciated the field trip. I learned some things.
Very good. Thanks, Kenneth. Does Jerry have his hand up?
I do. I
Okay,
too,
good.
I concur with Kenneth, and I wanted to thank Xander. He really kind of provided documentation and detail that really made the whole project very understandable. So thanks to you, Xander.
Very good. Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else? All right. well,
Arnold is thinking,
Okay, Arnold.
something that emerged on the Bowerman trip, and I think it might have emerged on the High Palm trip too, but I missed the High Palm trip, was that it's difficult to put in writing what everyone wants to do, and that makes people nervous because when writings come out, they don't exactly describe what many people, or sometimes what any people exactly want, because it's really hard. I think on the Bowerman trip, at least, the group, including people who were kind of nervous about what was written down so far, got a pretty good feel from Tara and Xander and Randy Paris about what the intention was and what the implementation would end up being, as long as those people were overseeing it. So I don't think there's not an extreme level of nervousness and urgency about it, but I think it's in everyone's interest to keep trying to get it in writing, what we're pulling off. It has worked in the past on the Mad River District, for instance. I don't think that the writing ever, the description in writing of the projects never really totally satisfied people, but the execution and implementation, I think, satisfied most people. But as positions change, new people work on the next project and try and make progress off of the old project. It will be increasingly important to have, it would be increasingly nice to have something written down that everyone feels good about and feels clearly expresses what we're after. So I encourage people working on the project to keep scratching their head. It's not working in the woods, but it's for the good of the woods. And I think we'll all benefit in the long run if we can, to the extent that we can manage to pull it off, reducing or committing what we have in our vision, our collective vision, to writing. So I'm happy with the brain trust that's working on it. I'm happy with, I think most people are on the same page once we get out and point at this and point at that and agree on this and agree on that. It would just be really nice to be able to have it in writing in the record for the next people and the next number of projects. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Arnold. Okay, looks like we got hands up from Larry and Jerry. Let's go with Larry.
Yeah, I would concur with what Arnold said. That's what we need to strive for. My takeaway from being out there was the three parties that he mentioned. Two of the three won me over, but one of them, their explanation of what was happening in the woods made me very concerned. So I thought Xander did a great job of breaking down how he saw it and how he would implement it. But like Arnold said, that's not what's written down in the scoping. And yeah, we just got to figure out that magic way of describing it and not using just one method like basal area or spacing or whatever. We've got to come up with our own sort of imaginative way of describing exactly what we're doing, because it's very important. And I think it's going to help sell this concept to others that are struggling with what to do in these sorts of situations in the forest.
All right, thanks, Larry. Jerry, you got your hand up?
I do. I concur with Larry, and when we're out in the woods and we're standing around looking at things and we say, oh, that'd be good to take that tree out and that'll make a healthy forest, and everybody nods their head that they all want healthy forest. And then how do you translate that to for the people who have to write things down to move projects forward? And I think that they're both Larry and Arnold, keep working at that. How do you translate, yes, healthy forest, and yes, some kind of metric that brings that about, but doesn't totally rely on the metrics, because metrics can't be universally applied to the landscape. It has to be moment by moment. Tough job, but I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, Tara, you have something to chime in on for that meeting?
Yeah, number one, you can tell I can't find the raise my hand icon in Zoom, because I was just like, you just have to watch me raise my hand. So I have, that was something that we talked about at High and Palm as well. And so I have very clearly in my notes that when we talk on the radio, we call it clear text. And so it's clear to me that when we scope, we need to use clear text and talk about, we can stand in the woods, just like you all said, and talk about, biggest trees, healthiest trees that can provide the most shade for the longest period of time. But you can't find that big picture concept as a desired end result in the document, in the scoping document. And so I'm looking to front load that type of wording into the latest High and Palm document. And also just to clear up a few things, I don't want to get super prescriptive in the scoping document because we haven't talked, but it's clear we're not going to put equipment in riparian areas. And so because we don't talk about that in the scoping, then if you were reading it, you might think, oh my gosh, they're leaving the door open to take equipment in the scoping or into the riparian area, or they're going to put equipment in the roadless area or whatever that might be. And so I'm going to take we're going to do a better job on High and Palm. It's going to be a learning process, just like Jerry said. It's hard to meet both the narrative piece with the technical piece, but we're going to do a different job of it on the High and Palm scoping and have more of that big picture narrative in there for people to recognize what it is we're talking about and what the big picture is. So I want to thank you guys first of all for that. And then I want to also echo, I thought that Xander did an excellent job on that field trip. Was really thrilled to have him there. Also want to thank him. He came out for the public field trip that we had last Saturday. We followed up our collaborative field trip with a public field trip. And one topic came up that we hadn't talked about as a collaborative that I wanted to share with all of you. There's, for one, there are some actual lots. Don't ask me how, but the National Forest owns or manages some lots around Guy Covington. And there was one that got left out of the original project that talking with the volunteer fire department, they wanted to make sure that we included that little piece. and then one other little piece. So it was an additional like 10 acres. I'm happy to share that. If anyone wants to know where those acres are, I'm happy to share that with you. But the public had asked us to include those acres for treatment. It seemed to make, it's 10 to 15 acres. I haven't GIS'd it yet, but that seemed reasonable. The other piece of that came out of the public meeting that I wanted to share with all of you was just something we hadn't talked about yet that we probably wouldn't do. Well, I would say we won't do a leaf tree mark in those high rec areas. You know, that when you leaf tree market, you're going to be looking at paint for, you know, the next 10 years. So when we do our sample mark for all of you, we probably won't do it in the high rec areas. So if that makes sense. So if everyone's kind of tracking what I'm saying, we would, in those high rec areas, we would do a cut tree so that we didn't have to stare at paint for the next, you know, 15, 20 years. So those were some of the outcomes from that public meeting that I wanted to share with all of you. Again, just thank you for your continued participation in those field trips. And that was one that we put together very quickly, and you all responded very well, and I really appreciated it. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Tara. Any other comments, questions, feedback on the field trips? All right, I'm not seeing any. So we will move on. Up next, we've got our Forest Service updates. So Shasta Trinity, is that Tara and Sarah gonna join forces? Who wants to go first? Maybe since Tara's been talking, maybe Sarah can go first, huh?
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm home with my sick kid today.
Ah.
So you may hear the Mickey Mouse Club on in the background. And I kind of need everybody to roll with that. So
we can do that.
Thank you. We're excited to announce that Trinity Camps is officially out for scoping. Could you turn on the volume? And we should have that open through mid-June. We'd welcome comments from any member of the collaborative as a whole. All of that works. We want all the input. Really appreciated the field trip we did with everyone and hope to continue the conversation. We are hoping to get to the finish line on that September of this year for a decision. So that is looking good. Is this just forestry updates that we're doing? Or is this
Forest Service updates? So
Forest Service updates?
You have a broad mission?
We do have a broad mission. Well, I saw Minersville is elsewhere on the agenda, so I won't touch on Minersville yet.
That's true. Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, well, my next big thing is Minersville. So I think I'll end it there unless there are questions for me specifically and pass to Tara.
All right. Any questions for Sarah? Not seeing any. Thank you, Sarah. All right, Tara, are you up and ready?
Yes, if I could be more patient after I click the button and just wait a second, I could be doing better.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. It seems like I have a fairly lengthy update for you. Let's start with hiring. We've actually been fairly successful with some of our hiring. It's not the 3 steps forward I'd like to take. It's often 2 forward and 1 back, but we are making progress. The bulk of our successes so far have been in recreation, though we do expect, we have a pretty significant ologist and forester and forestry tech events that are hiring events that are coming up in the next couple of months. So hoping to add a significant amount of positions in those arenas. So I wanted to share that with all of you. Let's see. We expect that the roadside hazard tree NEPA document should be signed next week. It's the one the region prepared for us. That should get a signature next week, and we'll be getting to work on implementing that. For planning, looking to get WCF phase 2 will be signed before we meet again, so that'll be nice to have that done. And I expect that we'll also have August phase 2 will be signed. That got hung up a little bit between weather and everything else, but we'll have that signed, and we have some of that work in a large IRSC as optional work. So we are working to put together an IRSC, which is a large service contract in that August fire footprint, and also to clean up for Heidi. We're also looking to let you know that we're looking to clean up all of those trees that were dropped along the 16 road. So we're looking to get those yarded and decked and off of the landscape. So that's a very large project, and by large I mean it's very, very, very large. It's the largest contract we've ever put together, and it's not a timber sale contract. It's a service contract with product removal, and we've worked with a special group to help us get that contract out and get it put together. So that's been helpful. Let's see. I expect that we will get the scoping document out for High and Palm in the next couple of weeks. So I'm working on that myself to make sure that those changes that we're looking for are in there. Also, it's come to my attention that we haven't always put the CEs, the veg management CEs, into the local papers. And so I will be changing that. If we're doing any veg programs of any size or significance other than maybe a couple of trees, we will be getting that into the papers so that the public has access to that and has a chance to comment during the scoping. Let's see, we're logging at McFarland. That's still going on, so that's good news. And we're putting together an additional fuels contract to take on the Kellogg fuel break. We're going to get that freshened up. The maintenance is included in that NEPA document, so we're looking to get that work done again. And then also to take out we're going to get 270 acres into a contract for pilot for the fuels portion of it right now. And then expect to potentially put pilot, address that through a SPA in the first quarter of fiscal year 24. I'm also trying to find a way to get the Harrison Gulch office opened a couple days a week. So I'm working on that because I feel like we maybe don't have the customer service level that I'd like to have on that side of the unit. And bothers me that people have to drive all the way to Hayfork. And I would say the same for the Burnt Ranch community. So we're trying to look into ways to provide better customer service for across the whole of the west side. So that's what I think I have for you. It seems like there's so many things. See, I've talked about, fuels. We were successful and managed to get 938 acres burned on the west side. And I want to thank the RCD partnered with us to get that done, as well as the Watershed Center. And while I know that's not an earth-shattering amount of acres, because it was mostly pile burning, because of the rain, because of the snow, and that represents probably 40 to 50 days of burning, of people going out and in all kinds of weather to try to get that done. So our goal next year is to have significantly more prescribed fire acres, but the only way to get to that is if you do the veg management first. So as we increase in our veg management program, expect the prescribed fire treatments to come in behind it to help us accomplish that maintenance that we've all talked about. That was a lot, I feel like. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you, Tara. Any questions for Tara? Chris.
Hey Tara, I was wondering what you guys were able to broadcast burn this year in terms of acreage.
I think we only got about 100 acres in the Weirville Community Forest. That was about it.
Cool, thank you.
Yep, and actually I do have one more, so I would go back. I wanted to let this group know that the two forest supervisors requested a NEMO team come in, which is a national management organization to help us with the fuel modeling, and to make sure we have the most strategic treatments under our priority landscape. In other words, if we're going to treat acres, we want to make sure that we're treating the right acres that will be the most effective fuel treatments on the landscape. And so Ted and Rachel had asked this group to come in and help us do some of that really high-tech fuel modeling. And these folks are leaders in their fields. So I really appreciate, and we're kind of the poster child for getting that kind of support to help model some of the treatments we're considering, and help us make sure that we're tuned in on the areas that will reduce the risk around our communities, and help us be more help the forest be more fire resilient. So I almost forgot to let you know about that. So that's an important thing for us. It gives us a lot more tools in our toolbox and a lot more help taking a look at some of this the fuel strategy. Go ahead, Jerry, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just, the fuel modeling work, isn't that what the Watershed Center bought that big software program for doing?
You're talking about land tender?
Yes.
That, yes and no. That is a big part of, I anticipate that to be a big part of our future, because it's a lot about the collaboration. But as far as the really technical fuel modeling piece and tying it to pods and making sure that our pods and our fire sheds are kind of connected, and that we're really making sure we're looking at it through all of those different technical lenses. Land tender, to the best of my knowledge, has a portion of that, but it's a lot about the collaboration piece of it.
Definitely about the collaboration, for sure, bringing as many stakeholders into the conversation. But
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other questions for Tara?
I'd like to tack on quickly to the land tender thing, for clarity. And from my understanding is we will have that program rolling in July. But I think the modeling that Tara's talking about will be eventually an input into the land tender program, so that it can kind of quickly make the recommendations that it's useful for, and it's useful for coming up with a lot of alternatives that are easy to showcase. And so I think there's a yearly data acquisition for those model inputs in land tender, and so it'd probably be next year when Tara's folks and their outputs would be able to be included in that.
So Tara's agency will be one of the collaborators for land tender. Rather than being the end result, land tender will be the end result, including Forest Service input. All right?
Yeah. And we did, just so you know, I'm sure you're all aware, we did both the Shasta, Trinity, and the Six Rivers kicked in with the Watershed Center to help acquire that that program for the sake of working together across this landscape and really focusing on that collaboration and being strategic as a group. So that we're really excited about using that as well and working together through that program.
Okay, any other questions, comments on Tara's report? Seeing none, I think we're ready. Last call for Shasta Trinity. Any other questions for Shasta Trinity? Okay, I think we're up for Six Rivers. So Kristen, is that
Yes.
you? I see you nodding your head. All right, you're up.
You got good audio on me okay there?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great to follow Tara there because she hit on a lot of highlights. She brought up the NEMO team, and so I don't really need to go into much more detail on that. So I'm glad that was a good catch. I will say that is a new innovative use of the NEMO team that Ted and Rachel came up with. And so we're excited to, again, be a leader in the region to use existing organizations and structures that we have in new ways. And so we're pretty excited to see what comes out of that. And also land tender, yes, we have the Six Rivers also has money in an agreement to help with that acquisition. And my understanding is that it will be a great way to display the information that has been modeled in other programs and such, and then have it in a real digestible, usable form for everybody. So we're pretty excited about that as well. I'll move on to a little bit about hiring, just real quick. So we are doing pretty good with our forestry staff at the district. I will have another forester in the silviculture culturist position, an SAF recent grad coming on in June. And so I'm really excited. It's been a long time. We'll have 4 foresters in the Mad River district shop. So I'm very excited about that. We are using our forestry staff to fill the gaps with the fuels crews and the fuels planners and such that we don't have yet. That will be part of the hiring for the landscape, additional hiring that's going on. And to note, my district, we did lose battalion 42 Adam Booth to the BLM. So I have just Nancy Curran, which is not just that's a big thing to still have, but currently Nancy is the only existing fuel staff currently at the district. I do have authorization to hire a GS11 fuels planner, so I'm looking very excited to get that filled. Also new is a fisheries biologist that will be servicing the district out of the supervisor's office. So we haven't had a fisheries biologist for a long time. And then of course, well, I've lost my heritage person also, so I will be hiring an archaeologist, but our partners have done a great job in helping us fill in those gaps with the specialists. So that's pretty much on the hiring. And then some other past business, I just want to let you know that all the existing timber sales that we've had on the district, First 48, Finnegan, D70, the Beaver Slides, Three Forks, all of those have all been completed and closed. So those are all now closed sales, which means we'll be able to move into the fuels reduction portion of those projects. And we will be using our various funding instruments that we have, our agreements, our Joint Chiefs funding, and some of the landscape, excuse me, my allergies are really bad, landscape funding that we've received to work on the fuels portion of that. The one timber sale that was purchased, Greenacre Woods, that Humboldt Redwoods is planning to start operations in there in spring of 24. So we'll have some green timber coming off the district, and I'm excited about that. Okay, so then moving on to some current work we also did that's tied to both our disaster funding work areas for the August and the Trinity landscape, is that we used one of our partners, NCRC, to help us get a local contractor to do snow removal and open the roads that we needed in order to access our areas for OWL surveys, the NSO surveys. In addition, it allowed access for our engineers to assess road damage from the storms, which there is substantial road damage, and made access for some of our crews, like the hot shot crew, to do some tree bucking in open roads. So that was a great success. We spent about 4 weeks and probably did 150 miles or so with the contractor to get those roads open. It was important to me to be able to stay on schedule as much as possible with our spotted owl surveys, so that we can lift our lots and have the longest operational period for our vendors and purchasers that we could provide. So that was a big success there. Additionally, talking about the landscape, So, you know, our landscape that we have on the Mad River is generally was along Mad Ridge and was the upper Roof Lake, you know, the upper Mad watershed. Working with staff, we were able to make a small adjustment to that boundary and add about 38,000 acres, which incorporated a portion in Humboldt County, so to the north, but that is where our next project areas are planned. You've probably heard me mention the rat tail and bucktail. And we also were able to incorporate some areas in Henshaw Valley to grab some of those county roads. So my segue into that is that our next projects as part of the landscape will be looking at those county road hazard tree mitigations, both to mitigate the hazard trees, like I just said, but also to do fuels reduction wider than what that narrow easement is. And we met yesterday with Kelly Sheen and his staff to talk about their assistance with that, including some NEPA preparation. So I'm excited to have some new skills and some new opportunities, you know, expanding the use of our partners to help us all get the work done, you know, that we all need. So that is one area that we'll be moving into. In terms of our agreements, LaJean Heyman has been working really hard along with Kelly McElroy to get the agreements with all the funding that we have. And so most of them, well, everything made it into grants and agreements. There's been some delays, some have been executed, some not, but they are definitely up there in the queue. And so the funding that we received will be in those agreements with the Watershed Center, the RCD, Humboldt State for Archaeology, NCRC. And I think that was it. We did some other ones, a small one with the 3 Cs as well for some trail work. So that was a huge lift. That has moved us into planning for our program of work for fiscal year 24 with the disaster correction, the landscape funding that we anticipate getting. And so I talked about the county roads. We're looking at some WUI community protection. I'm interested in doing fuels reduction around private property on Forest Service in strategic areas that we're just developing that right now. And then of course, South Fork Mountain, that is a project with our sister forest, Shasta Trinity. So those are the ones along with Rat Tail and Bucktail in Humboldt County that'll get us back in the green that we're going to be interested in doing, and we're going to put that forward in our program of work for that. So in order, I'm going to touch on this, you know, in order to make us more competitive in the funding request, because, you know, we're competing with 21 other landscapes across the nation. Areas where we're in the landscape, obviously that boundary is helpful, but where we can show that we're in mapped WUI, it makes us much more competitive. And so I know we met with the Fire Safe Council back in early February to talk about that. There's some language there that helps us describe what the WUI is. But the closer that we could move to more of a mapping effort in some of these very strategic areas, I think would be helpful to both forests in order to make our argument just that much stronger. So I just sort of wanted to throw that out there to you guys as a group for something to think about that we could work on. And then I think one other big thing that occurred this week is that we had a pre-bid field trip with potential purchasers and vendors for our very large August IRSC. We looked at fuels units and our area-based salvage that is tied to reforestation. And so they had a pretty good turnout. Several local operators, timber fallers and such were there. You know, I'm hopeful. I think the fuels work will get done. You know, to be completely transparent, we do have logs that have been standing out there for 3 years. It recently came to my attention that one of our local mills doesn't use a kiln, and so that bugs become an issue. That those mills that don't have kilns are not interested in accepting logs that may have insects in them. So that was a little bit of a learning curve there for me. So we will be looking at ways to mitigate this material and get that in some form in a merchantable manner off the landscape. So we're working some angles on that. Those proposals are due in at the end of the month. We may be looking at extending that a little bit longer, but we were hoping to have an award sometime in July for that project. So I think I have, one last thing I wanted to mention is in a few weeks ago, in the sort of the end of April, we did have the regional fuel staff visit the district and do actually the forest, and they went to all the different districts and did a review. And so we had them at Mad River for a day, and there is definitely interest and support in seeing more prescribed fire on the ground, understory fire in particular, which is not something that the Mad River District has done in great amounts in recent history. We've done a lot of pile burning, and we have a lot of machine piles that need to be burned. But that's another thing I'm interested in getting some feedback from the community and from the groups on their feelings about large areas of understory burning in order to reduce fuels. So I'm interested in looking at starting in the August footprint and doing some of that in there. But those are two things that I would kick back to you guys that I'm interested in hearing and talking about, would be understory fire, prescribed fire, and then looking at mapping areas for the CWPP and the WUI. So I'm looking at my notes, and I think that that's all I have for you right now. So I'll stop talking and see if there's any questions.
All right, thank you, Kristen.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments for Kristen at this time? Not seeing.
Yeah, Kristen, is the Acre Woods, you called it Green Acre Woods, is that the same Acre Woods that the collaborative sort of help come up with?
Yes, absolutely it is. That got damaged in the August complex, both by contingency fire lines and the fire itself. And so we had to, the portion that was damaged, because it was under solicitation during the fire, the portion that was damaged was incorporated in the August EA NEPA analysis. And then the remainder, we surveyed that, and it was fine to move forward. So the other units that were not affected by the fire were just, the cruise was amended and repackaged as is. There were no other changes to prescriptions or anything like that. It was just a subset of the Acre Woods, and we called it Green Acre Woods just to make that distinction.
Question is, with South Fork Mountain project between you and Shasta Trinity, has there been any movement forward on that? I know it's been being talked about for a few years now, so.
Yeah, it has been. There has been a little bit of work. The Watershed Center, Randy Paris in particular, has done some modeling and some GIS and some potential just boundary layout there. So, and there was a drone flight as well to capture some information of the landscape. So land tender, we're excited about that, thinking that will help us. But in terms of say a pill for the NEPA team and such, that has not happened. I do know that the Watershed Center is very interested in helping us with third-party NEPA in a robust manner, and so I'm very excited about that. So we're ripe to pivot to start working on that.
One last question, the understory burning, do you have some areas that you're thinking of doing that?
Yes, I will admit that I'm a little nervous about it. I mean, we don't have a lot of green trees left on the district. And so the areas that we have green trees, what I'm thinking about is where we've included oak woodland restoration in our NEPA, and then in our new NEPA would be a good place to start in areas that are green. So those, and this is small amounts. Like I think in first 48, we had something like 120 acres maybe of oak woodland restoration. So to start small in those. So yes, that. And then in sort of, I guess, low risk areas, which would be out in the high severity areas of the August complex, where perhaps we need to do site prep if we have some areas where we want to do reforestation, or there's nothing there. It's too expensive to get the material off the ground, and where we could do something there. Now that's not, I say there's not much of an overstory, right, in some of those high severity areas, so maybe that's not the right terminology for it.
I
But
wondered if that was the area one of the areas you were thinking of, because I don't know of any other resolution for that area than to just burn what's left that's there that's dead. So
yeah, and that's definitely getting pointed out to me more. I think I hadn't really had my focus there, but it's becoming obvious. So yes, those are the kind of areas that I was thinking about as well. That would be a good place to start, maybe kind of low risk and ease into it.
well, let the collaborative know when you've got something to show us. We
Yes,
haven't been out to your neck of the woods in a while, so.
that's true, because our bulk of the work has been the August EA, and like Tara mentioned that they're going to have a huge IRSC. What we just solicited out with our 4 timber sale, I call them timber sale, but our area based project areas, and then the roadside is really the largest contract solicitation that the forest has ever done. And so it's really been like a huge gulp. And so now we're sort of in that pivot point to move to some other projects. And like I was mentioning, where we're looking at is going into more of Humboldt County to the north, just over the line. That's where Rat Tail is, where the large PG&E gas and high voltage lines come through on that ridge, and there's homes in there. So that's the next place that we're looking at. And I know in the past, you guys, this is Trinity County, we're talking about Humboldt. So yeah.
All right, any other questions for Kristen? There we go, Tara.
Actually not, just wanted to, yep, there we go. Just wanted to chime in really quickly. One of the things that we haven't quite mastered is somehow having enough time during the scoping period, and Kristen spoke to it, but giving enough time to perhaps get a letter during the scoping period from the collaborative group. And I know there's a process that has to go to the Board of Supervisors. And so since Heidi is on the call as well, along those lines, when the collaborative, when we got the priority landscape and it was, what can we do to help, actually getting a letter of support during the scoping period, or at least, that we went out and that we're working on it together. Anything along those lines would be helpful. And if what I'm doing and not, only having a 30-day scoping period or whatever that is, if that's hindering your ability to provide that, or if there's something I can do to make that easier, that I'd like to do that. But that would be something that would be beneficial and really, on the record demonstrate how we're working together to come up with these projects. I just, when Kristen was talking about, that is something that would be beneficial on our side. And I'm not sure that I'm positioning you for success to be able to get that done. So I guess that's a question for the group. What can we do to give you enough time, or to collaborate with you enough that we might be able to gain a letter of support from the collaborative group? Does that sound all right? Kristen, I didn't mean to step on your time there.
No, that's great. And actually, that's a great idea. And I think South Fork Mountain might be a perfect place to do that because it's both of our forests together and then it's sort of two birds with one stone there, right? So I love that idea.
Anybody have any thoughts on that proposal? Question?
Well, it just takes a long time for the collaborative to take a vote on it, send a letter to the Board of Supervisors, get the Board of Supervisors to sign off on that. So I think what would help is if there's sort of a advanced preview ahead of time so that we could then take a position on it, go to the supervisors then we'd be going to the supervisors during the scoping and possibly getting a letter out from them. I think it's going to be at least 60 days probably would be what we would need in order to get something like that to happen.
Well, you see how long our projects take, so I think there's plenty of time to do that.
But our current schedule is pretty cumbersome to merge with getting letters, but there's nothing that would preclude the collaborative from having an emergency or a special meeting online, via email to vote on letters or review letters and then vote on them. So that'd be another tactic.
May I interject?
Go for it, Heidi.
Another option too is if the timelines are too tight to have a letter that's supported by the full board, you can ask the supervisors within the district that you're working in, and we can provide letters of support from our district without having to have a full board letter. We would be able as individuals to provide letters of support if the work is being done in our district.
Right, but I think that would have to be on a more personal level, not on a collaborative level.
Of course, yes, but if approached on a project in my district and I was fully aware of it and I believed that it was something that was going to be beneficial to my district, I would make the time to offer that additional support if it was something that was requested of me.
Right.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Any other thoughts on that proposal? Okay, seeing none. Any other questions for Kristen before we close that out? All right, not seeing any. Thank you, Kristen, very much for that good report.
Great, thanks.
You bet. Okay, we're going to move on here to our next item, and we do not have BLM with us today, but Kelly and I thought this might be a good opportunity for Chris Cole to introduce himself in his new capacity, wearing the NRCS hat for the local office. It's kind of putting Chris on the spot, but Chris, are you up to the up to the task to take advantage of this and give it a little introduction in your new role?
I guess I'm put on the spot, so I just got to do it.
But you don't have the NRCS hat. What is that? A farmer's hat?
They actually didn't provide a hat.
Okay, I got one if you need one.
They didn't give me a shirt or anything, but I got an office. So I'm Chris Cole. I guess I've been a part of these meetings for a while, and my former role was the Forest Health Program Manager at the RCD. And then prior to that, I worked at the Watershed Center for like 3 to 4 years, running forestry crews. And then prior to that, I did wildland fire for 3 seasons for the National Park Service on a hand crew. And then I guess I have a degree in biology. And I just recently accepted the role. This is week 4 on the job at the NRCS as the new district conservationist for the Weaverville field office, which covers all of Trinity County. And so I'm excited to start this new job, and there's lots of learning. So I'm a little behind on some of that stuff, but it'll eventually I'll be up to speed. They're telling me it takes a year. So I'm hoping for I don't know, maybe 11 months or something, but we'll see how that plays out. And yeah, so I'll probably continue to be a part of this group. I think it's good to get a lot of this background information because we're in contact with lots of landowners, and to know what's going on in the county is critical for my own planning purposes through NRCS, and as well just to keep people informed, because a lot of times they just don't know where to go. And so I will always put in a good word for the collaborative group, and maybe get some more members and stuff. And yeah, I think that's about it, unless people have any questions for me.
All right, thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? All right, seeing none, thanks again. We're gonna move on. All right, Sarah, I think you're back up on Minersville. Are you? There she is. All right.
All right. So Minersville has had some ups and downs this year, and I want to clarify some things that are going on short term and are also already completed with Minersville, and then the longer term boat ramp rehabilitation project that we've been talking about since I've got here. So short term, there was some damage to the Minersville boat ramp caused by Bureau of Reclamation's contractor that was doing work out at Trinity Dam. So that's the big kind of gouge that made it go down to one lane only, that frustrated a number of individuals, rightly so. So they have been working on fixing it. My understanding is it is fixed or will be before Memorial Day weekend, but I think it got fixed this week. So that short-term access issue should be resolved by the holiday. Longer term, so any questions on the damage from the contractor or the short-term stuff, and then I can get to the long-term project next.
Not seeing any, Sarah.
Yeah. So long-term, the next step for the long-term project is an engineering and design contract to get the full engineered work done for the project that's funded by Department of Boating and Waterways. So we had a lot of back and forth with the Department of Boating and Waterways earlier this year. I updated you guys about that then. We got all the funding released for that engineering design contract in March. The contract went out on the streets. They went through the process of qualifying engineering firms, and now they're in the process of getting bids. So if all goes according to plan, that's a lot of details, but the bottom line is, if all goes according to plan in the federal contracting process, we should be kicking off the design work, so beginning the actual work on July 15th. And that's the update for Minersville. I know we talked about what the timeline would be going out from that to when we'd have a completed design, and pending, back and forth with the contractor and not being able to fully predict the future. The rough guess that I have is end of the calendar year to have a design. And then that design would feed into environmental review, which would then kick off in calendar year 2024. I always have to think in fiscal year or calendar year and like, which one am I talking about? So that's why I spoke weirdly there, because it's like part of my brain is thinking fiscal year.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah? Doesn't look like we have any, so thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into other items and partner updates. So first up is the Recreation Committee. Do we have any representation from the Rec Committee today with us?
Ross,
are you willing to give us a Rec Committee report? Evidently.
did he drop off?
He may have dropped out.
Yeah, it looks like he's dropped off.
Okay,
I'd say the bulk of what we probably covered was largely just spoken about by Sarah. So I don't know that there was any other major topics that I can recall from last week.
okay. Up next, we have the RCD.
Yep, I'll start off by, I guess, kind of tied to the rec committee. We've been having a lot of work in preparation for the LaGrange Classic Bike Race, which happens on June 3rd. So our rec program has been working a lot on log outs and clearing trails and working with the Watershed Center on many of the trails that were needing maintenance after this heavy winter season that we've had. So they've been working on that for the past couple of months. Forest Health, we have all 4 of our 4-person crews up and running, most recently working in the McKinney Camp area. I think up in some of the plantation areas that are in part being funded by, or large part being funded by Caltrans Forest Health program or project. And we've also been planning some other significant areas that we'll be moving on to. We have some contract work that we've contracted out in Indian Creek area, which I believe on BLM land. So that work has been kind of continuing. As Kristen mentioned, we have been working, we have now had an executed agreement for what Six Rivers is calling their road maintenance program. And that is kind of 3 different parts. One of them has to do with actual road maintenance within the road maintenance of county roads within the August complex on Forest Service lands, as well as hazard tree mitigation along the county roads within that same footprint, and then a NEPA to extend that those areas to be treated, because the initial flush that we're going to be going through and dealing with is pretty much limited to the county road right of ways, which is about 25 foot on either side off of center line along county road. And the NEPA would then sort of extend out into Forest Service lands beyond that, with a total buffer being around 400 feet. And so that NEPA, as Kristen mentioned, we were just meeting about that, and we will be reaching out to DOT for some prioritization. We have some GIS work that we need to do to get prepped so that we can kind of focus on specific areas and high priorities with the DOT on that regard. And then working both internally and externally with some contractors to actually get that CE level NEPA together over the next, I think we didn't really put a timeline to it, but we're hoping that we could probably have that together by either the end of the calendar year or early into next year, so that we can begin potential additional implementation on that into 2024. Outside of that, those 2 programs. We also have worked with Kelly McElroy on the Chef's Trinity side to get our 10-year stewardship agreement prepped and submitted to grants and agreements, which is a significant project that will include forest health projects, fisheries projects, road projects, and things of this nature, with many different funding sources. And this stewardship agreement is actually on pretty much all Forest Service land within Trinity County, including downriver, Mad River, and all the west side of the Shasta T. So that's going to be a very significant project and will set us up as a 10-year stewardship agreement that will also set us up for modifications for additional work in years as we're moving forward. So that's a pretty huge agreement that we've got together now with them. And hope to see that executed here within the next month or so, we're hoping, so we can actually get to work on some of those projects. What else? Working collaboratively with the Watershed Research and Training Center on an assessment for the Upper Trinity River watershed using Department of Conservation funds that will hopefully yield some potential shovel-ready projects to assist with water quality, water quantity, water retention. We wouldn't necessarily know it from this year's snow levels, but with the drought having been sort of fairly extreme over the past many years, the state was keen on trying to figure out ways to do larger, scale projects that would help with water retention, especially since we weren't having the snowpack, or weren't able to rely on snowpack over the past many years. So we're working with the Watershed Center on that project, and our botany program has now actually doubled in its staff capacity with regard to our conservation technicians. We have 2 full crews that are currently working on noxious weed mitigation up and removal up in the Carville and river complex, the Coffee Creek area of the river complex, trying to sort of knock down some of the incoming weeds that have started taking over since that fire happened. And some of the sort of long-standing legacy areas where those issues are still sort of ongoing. And we will be working, we have signed a document with Caltrans, both to do revegetation for the Swift Creek Bridge realignment, as well as the Ditch Gulch down on Highway 36, the Ditch Gulch Bridge alignment, which is going to be a significant $600,000 project for the next 5 years. So that's a pretty major project that we have online. That's also, I believe, sits within the August complex, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's it for me off the top of my head.
All right, Kelly, any questions for Kelly? Not seeing any. Up next,
I got one real quick for Kelly.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Did you guys finish the Browns Mountain contract? It was like 100 acres up on top of Browns Mountain.
Browns Mountain, we did some work up there, and then it went to contract, and I believe that they had started on it. I haven't heard whether it's been completed yet.
Okay, thank you.
Based on its size, it could be that it's already done, but I actually haven't heard a report out on that since the contract was awarded and then that work started. So I'm not totally sure, Chris. Sorry about that.
All right, final call for Kelly. Any other questions? Okay, up next, Watershed Center. Is that Xander?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll start with we've been busy with our efforts to get our seasonal staff up and running. We're probably 80% of the way to getting all of our seasonal technician folks working on the ground. And I think this is probably a record year staffing wise. We've got we're running 3 forestry technician crews this summer, 2 on the Six Rivers side, 1 on the Shasta Trinity side. I think we have 10 wildlife folks who are in the thick of NSO surveys right now, again on both forests. Fuels crews are up and running. I think we may even staff up to 4 crews this summer, just to try and meet as much of the demand as we can. They were out in Mad River Ruth area doing a community chipping day recently. I think we have a crew working on South Fork Road in Sawyer. Our masticator's been working on some BLM projects around Ewing Reservoir and Hayfork. And I know we'll be starting on the Wells Mountain fuel break between Douglas City and Hayfork. My compliance document's been in Sacramento for over a month now, so any day I'm hoping to hear back on approval for that. Still no word yet on the proceedings of both the Community Wildfire Defense Grant and the Forest Health Grant we were awarded. So we're sitting tight in the meantime before we actually get funding in hand to be able to start the compliance on those projects in Junction City, Weaverville, Douglas City, Hayfork, and Hyampom. And that'll, at least for the Hyampom and Hayfork portions of those projects, that came at a perfect time with some of the federal focus in those areas. I think we'll be able to dovetail in with the Hyampom project, and we'll be tying in closely with the pilot project too, to have a really complete series of treatments there. So I'm excited to get that moving. I appreciate all the input that we've gotten regarding the Bowerman project. Glad to see that come as far as it has, and we're looking to turn the corner and start getting some on the ground planning and layout done to get that to the next phase. The next NEPA project that we've been looking at is a series of fuel breaks around Junction City. There's been some community members requesting some work be done in the burned areas in the monument footprint adjacent to Junction City. So that's what we're taking a look at next. We're still in pretty early stages of getting that checked out, but that's next on the docket. I know our hydrology and fisheries folks have been working hard in cooperation with the Trust for Public Lands for some property way in the North County near, I believe it's near where the Pacific Crest Trail runs through. And so it had been industrial timberland, and Trust for Public Lands acquired it. And so we're helping deactivate a bunch of roads up there and kind of get that restoration process happening so that it can maybe someday be added to wilderness. Aside from that, finally got a new plotter, so we'll be able to bring wall maps to the field trips now and avoid the troubles that we've had the last couple. And I think that is everything that comes to my mind immediately. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Xander. Any questions for Xander?
I want to go back.
Kelly.
I just have one go back. If there's nothing more for Xander, there is one other thing I neglected to report out that I think might be of interest to this group, which has to do with the McConnell Foundation project that we're working on, primarily on SPI land up Highway 3 between Covington Mill and just south of Trinity Center, as well as some of the private lands in and around the east side of the basin. Here, that mitigated negative declaration document has scoping is closed. We've addressed a few minor comments that were brought to our attention by primarily Caltrans about working within the right-of-ways. We actually don't intend to work within their right-of-ways directly, so it's not going to really impact the design of the project. So that has been adopted by our board and is moving forward. Next steps on that is that it's going to this is a $10 million FEMA project through Cal OES. So it's now going to FEMA for their own internal NEPA document that they will be doing on that project, which will somewhat be based on the CEQA that we've done with an expected closing of that NEPA project about 1 year out. So mid 2024. After which point we should be able to begin implementation on that project. And that's a fairly significant 4,000 acre project. So that is moving along.
All right, thank you, Kelly. All right, just going back to Xander's report. Anybody else have questions, comments on Xander's report? Not seeing any. All right, Kenneth, I think you're up under others. What do you got for us? You still with us?
Okay, what? Yeah, I'm with you.
Great.
So, in the May 10th Trinity Journal, on the front page, there's a story called "Warrant Sweep Destroys Tons of Marijuana." It's about a bust that was done in Trinity Pines. And the way the story is written, it makes it out like these people are real criminals that were busted. Well, one of my tenants happens to know Naya Yang and the man that was the one man that was arrested and his family, and she has a completely different take on what occurred out there, including the shooting of this supposedly aggressive dog, which happened to be chained up. And it was not a threat to the arresting officers. So this is really of a concern to me because according to her, there were the 5 people who were busted were all Hmongs, and there was one white person who had a grow out there who was not busted. And she says that all of these people were permitted by the state to grow. Evidently, they may have had some problem with permitting by Trinity County, which is way behind the 8 ball in permitting people. It's caused a lot of problems for growers who have spent lots of money trying to get permits and be in compliance. So I think that it would be good for the collaborative to hear from our sheriff why these people were selected, and maybe hear from the county why they're having such a problem getting county permits to people who have been permitted by the state for a number of years. So I would like to see if other people are interested in hearing about this, I would like to see an agenda item for our next meeting on this.
All right, thank you, Kenneth. Any comments, feedback on Kenneth's proposal here as far as agenda item for next meeting? Not seeing
You
any.
want to make that statement?
Well, I wanted to comment,
go ahead, Larry.
sorry, a little slow on the getting the unmuted, but we do have a committee, which I was part of. Susan Bauer's part of it. Can't remember who else is on it now, but it's the cannabis subcommittee of the collaborative. And we have routinely invited the sheriff to come and speak to us about what the sheriff's department is doing, particularly with cannabis on public lands. That's our main focus. But we haven't had a whole lot of success getting the sheriff to report to us. So I think this is on private land, which we decided as a collaborative that we weren't going to get involved in. Doesn't mean I'm not interested in it and wouldn't like to hear the sheriff's explanation for what's going on there, but I think this is kind of outside of our jurisdiction.
All right, thank you, Larry. Anybody else have comments on what Kenneth is proposing?
Well, I thought one of the functions of the collaborative was to be promoting the economic progress in this county, and obviously the cannabis groves are the legitimate ones, are providing economic activity. And I did not realize that we were only looking at public lands in regard to cannabis grows. I thought this would come under the purview of the economic health of the county.
Terry, you got a comment on this? Okay. Diana.
I remember collaborative having a marijuana department, not department, but area committee. Yes, sorry. And I also, before the pandemic, spent 10 years going to almost every Board of Supervisors meeting. The Hmong really has really tried hard to do all the right things, and they're good people. And so, but yet at this point, I don't know that it's our purview. I don't think we support them. I do. But I don't know that we need to have another committee. I mean, go to California State, they've done that, I think, and in our county. And at that time, the county was moving really slow anyway towards agreeing with the need for the legality and the need for it.
All right, thank you, Diana. Jerry.
I think that the distinction between public and private land is pretty important, but I can't imagine that Saxon would make any comment about that situation to a group of people. It'd be hard to say anything to the Board of Supervisors, actually.
Okay, so it sounds like we have three members not in favor of what Kenneth is proposing, given the emphasis on public. Anybody can speak to a favorable position on Kenneth's proposal?
Arnold, maybe.
Arnold, are you a
Which
thumbs
is
up?
that, well, I don't think there can be a clear distinction. We've got a limited law enforcement capability. And if, as Kenneth suggested, or Kenneth's sources suggested, the limited law enforcement capacity is being used or diverted to private lands in any way that's inappropriate, it takes away from the capability of dealing with a very large problem on public lands. And so we ought to be interested. Any such sweep as happened in Trinity Pines doesn't just take a day of the sweep, it takes weeks and months of planning, surveillance, all sorts of stuff. So it is, or maybe, or can be an issue that affects what we want to do on public land. So I think at the minimum, we should invite the sheriff or get our committee to interact with the sheriff a little bit and explore some of these issues. Both out of interest as citizens and because it affects our interest in public land management.
Thank you, Arnold. Anybody else?
Do we need to?
We got a hand up by Larry, I see.
Yeah, well, I just, like I said, I'm interested in hearing more about this. I would just say that the collaborative would need to sort of change the parameters of the cannabis committee that we set up, because we're only supposed to focus on public lands. If the collaborative consents, then, the committee that already exists can ask the sheriff to come and talk to us about this and other situations like this that might come up in the future. I didn't mean for Jim to think I was voting a thumbs down to Ken. I just didn't think it was within our purview for the way that the committee was set up in the first place.
We have several times had the sheriff say, I'd like to do more, but I can't. There's only so many resources. So that's a completely appropriate, adequate nexus for the stuff we're interested in, I think. If his attention is being diverted to mistreating one ethnic group, I mean, that's a big charge. It's not proven, but it's of interest. But if he's prioritizing private land over public land, that's something we need to talk about. That's in our purview.
Yeah, and I'd like to add something that this person I talked with, who's connected with a lot of people in the growth scene, says that they're going to start circulating a petition to recall our sheriff. So that's how upset people in the grow community are about this action that was taken against private growers who are licensed by the state.
Yeah.
I can speak.
Okay, Heidi.
I will just speak as myself, as a member of the board from my seat, that to some of the questions. Last board meeting, we did pass a resolution that will allow the current list of growers who had gotten caught in an interpretation failure that was inside of the canopy versus the distance between the canopy versus the what was considered to be the whole grow operation. So because of the high turnover within the planning department, there was some interpretation mistakes that had been being made over the years. And so in order to resolve those, to make sure that the folks who had all other ducks in a row, if you will, were going to be allowed to move forward this season, we passed a resolution to kind of just step away from that interpretation failure that occurred because of the turnover, so that they could move forward with this growing season. The policy in itself is being reviewed currently, and so hopefully we'll be able to adjust and fix that interpretation problem that existed in the past. So we passed a resolution that will allow the folks who have all of their documents in and everything set up correctly with the cannabis division. They should be able to get those here quickly, and they will be able to enter into the this growing season. So that has been remedied. Regarding the sheriff made a pretty substantial report at the Board of Supervisors meeting. You can look at it on the recording if you wish. Like us, he is required to not speak on things that are in litigation and in things that are in current, under current investigation. So often for the Board of Supervisors and for the Sheriff's Department, people get to say and disclose all of what they know to be what they know and all of what they believe to be. And we have to remain silent because so much of that information is captured within the rules of the Brown Act for us and the rules that lay over us for in closed session. So at times we're at a disadvantage in getting information out because of that. So I would just ask that everyone hold with suspended judgment until information surrounding this issue in the Pines can be fully disclosed to the public. It is concerning and I appreciate that, but I just wanted to let you know mostly that things are happening. The machine is moving behind the scenes in investigating that. And then also that we were very happy to pass that resolution so folks could get going this year to the best of their ability.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Very, very informative. Appreciate that. Any,
Yeah, thank you.
so does that help, Kenneth, with regard to your request, or which you're saying?
Well, I do understand that now this is going to be in the courts, in the legal process, and so there's probably only so much that we could get from Saxon. So perhaps it's better not to have this on the agenda.
Or at least maybe kind of put it on there as a future, prospect, depending on, when we get the public disclosure, we can make a further judgment then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just heard about this morning, and I would like to find out more about it when I get to talk to my tenant at length.
Okay, very good. So we will not put that on the next agenda, but we'll kind of put it in a placeholder. Kind of like plan.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good.
Great. All right. With that, I think we're going to move into concluding business. Public input. Hearing none. Facilitation team. Kelly, we got anything?
Well, I guess as a follow-up to the restructuring of the collaborative meetings and some of this other information that I had some conversations with Tara about, what Tara needs. That was sort of not communicated out yet. So my intent would be to get out an email to the group here within the next few business days, like mid next week, I'd say at the latest, to address some of the things that we talked about earlier today. But I'm also going to include some other information with regard to some of the conversations that I had with Tara about what the collaborative can do. And I think this goes along with Heidi's request as far as, by and large, it'd be sort of, the collaborative group to some extent standing with the forest to have a better public presence with regard to community meetings, board of supervisors meetings, and things of this nature. So I'm going to kind of boil all that stuff down and bring in some of the comments, I think that, and some of the comments that you had made with regard to that restructuring process. So be looking for something from us within the next week or so that will sort of address those things.
Very good. Okay, up next, June 16th, field tour planning. I don't know that I've heard any specific proposals. Tara, you want to weigh in on this as far as what your priority would be for June? Or Sarah, or any other Forest Service?
Yeah, so I think we've been to High Palm. I think the June trip may be a good time to go out back over to Big Ranch.
Okay.
And then also to look at a project in Junction City that we're looking at with the Watershed Center, and that we've got a request from the community to look at doing some post-fire restoration and fuels reduction work there that we're gonna tee up for the Watershed Center.
All right, thank you.
Unless there's something somebody else wanted to do. Kristen dropped off. I think Sarah's had you out to Trinity camps, and I'm guessing she's not quite ready for anything on Highway 3 North. So I think that makes sense to go back out to Big Ranch and then look at that project in Junction City if that works for the group.
Very good. Anybody have any other ideas or comments on Big Ranch?
You're right, Tara. That sounds great.
Okay.
So Tara, can I work with you and your staff to try to begin to get an itinerary together for that field tour then, and field stops and all that?
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll try and get back to you like sooner than later, so we don't have a crush right in that last week.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic.
Okay, thank you, Tara.
All right, very good. Thanks, Tara. Okay, up next, agenda building. We do have a couple items here. The mortality issues, I think that's been kind of carrying over. Any update on that, Kelly?
No, I think that if that's something that I know that was brought up at the January meeting, and it was there was a couple of different points on that, one of which had to do with the downed hazard trees along the highway right of ways. So that would be sort of connecting with Caltrans potentially. But then I think there was also some discussion just about mortality in general, and I'm not sure who we would want to sort of bring in to talk to that point. But I could certainly reach out to Caltrans and get a sense of what their longer term plans or strategies are for dealing with mortality. If that will of the collaborative.
Anybody have thoughts on that proposed agenda item for next meeting?
Jerry has his hand up.
Jerry? Yeah.
I would have had it on a different item, but I think that'd be great. I think Tom Walsh brought up the mortality between here and Douglas City and just all over the forest. But yeah. I was wanting to talk about, I think in another meeting, maybe it's the last Fire Safe Council, but some community member from downriver really complained that the collaborative has no connection at all with their community. So I wonder if we can reach out to that district of the 6 rivers and get some representation or some discussion, talk, input from them. Can the facilitation team do that and maybe get them on the agenda for the next meeting? And if you want to, it was Dina Magdaleno who made the comment. And maybe follow up with her and or representatives of that district.
I remember those comments, Jerry, and I did, also Nolan Colgrove and Alex, and I'm not going to get his name right, but it was Miyagishiyama from the Lower Trinity River Ranger District, been a part of that particular group and asked to be involved with, or at least get notifications about this meeting, since we are, since the priority landscapes projects are basically inclusive of a lot of that area. And then we've also, both the Watershed Center and the RCD have been working a lot downriver. It seemed like it made sense that they get pulled into, potentially pulled into this, group. So I did include them in notifications for collaborative meetings, including this one, at their request. So I did reach out to them to a certain extent, but if we wanted to formally invite them to these meetings, that's something that we could certainly, do. I could do a more targeted outreach to them if we wanted to hear more from them directly, and address Dina's, specific comments, because that's definitely sort of been true that, while the Fire Safe Council is sort of working with a lot of those groups down there in the PBA and the Creek Fire Safe Council, which spills over into Trinity County and the lower downriver area. You know, that's certainly something that we could do. And if Heidi happened to be still on there, maybe we could work with Heidi about getting some, you know, more targeted attention for that area. That could be done as well. Heidi?
Yes, I'm friends with Dina. And then I'm more than happy to to help find a location or to meet some people out on the road or to come up and see the work that's being done on South Fork Road currently. More than happy to help facilitate in any way and support in any way that I can to get some folks down here to look at some things and to hear what the people down here have concerns about.
I mean, maybe it would be an opportunity to invite them. And if we're going to be doing our field tour downriver, it doesn't quite, you know, it's still within Shasta T's purview, but it might be worth getting them to come out on that field tour possibly as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
I
you,
would be
Heidi.
happy to encourage them to come.
Appreciate it.
Great. So I'll reach out to you, Heidi, about that.
Perfect.
As we're getting more of that together.
Perfect.
Thank you, Heidi.
So, could I make a comment about the drop mortality?
Go for it.
Wednesday, I had a log buyer out here from SPI looking at buying some green pine as well as some dead fir and green fir from my property. He said that their mills have a glut of pine and especially large pine. He was not interested in any of my larger pine trees, which surprised the heck out of me. And he was willing to work out something where I could sell him some of my trees on a certain schedule. So we're negotiating that right now. But also Heidi Rogers came out from BLM and she's looking at putting together an EA. She'd prefer to do something not so extensive. And she's looking for areas on BLM where she can include in a timber sale. Just off my property line, just this last winter, there are a couple of dozen mature Douglas firs that have died from beetles. And you look up on BLM and SPI, and there's just extensive mortality. It's like over by Douglas City, kind of similar to that. And Hayfork Valley now is experiencing a lot of that. So the problem maybe, I think Kristen, I think, mentioned something about some mills will not take anything that might have borers or beetles in it because they don't have a kiln. Evidently, Trinity Lumber is one of those mills that won't take that kind of those kind of logs. SPI will because they have a kiln, but they're already loaded up with logs. So we can all be wanting to salvage, but if there's no place to send it to, there's not much we can do.
Okay. Just for the benefit of all, Tara did comment in the chat room there that she's having a downriver meeting here. Tara, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yep, just have to wait a second for the video. I got it now. Yes, I will be having meetings in each of the communities. So similar to what we did in the fall of, what was that, 22? I don't remember. But I will continue to have open house meetings. And so I have 7 meetings that I'll be getting scheduled in the next, in June and probably early July because there's so many. But Burnt Ranch is on my list, as is Junction City, Coffee Creek, Weaverville, Hayfork, High and Palm, and Harrison Gulch. I think that's all 7. So I'm thrilled to work with Heidi. I had her on my list of people to contact anyway. And then I think I'll have the Burnt Ranch map and things I can share with folks down there for that project. And clearly when we go to High and Palm, we'll share the High and Palm project with those folks, and as well as Hay Fork. Yeah, so that's a big part of one of the things I'm trying to change is just to be more engaged with the community, and make sure that we're taking time to listen to what the concerns are out there. So
Great.
yeah, and I'll get those dates to you as soon as I get them. I'll get them over to the RCD so we can get them routed out to everyone who may want to participate. But that's what's going on with those open house meetings.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
That's great, Tara. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
I'd like to respond.
Go ahead,
just
Red.
to
Yeah.
Kenneth- To Kenneth's comment that Trinity River Lumber, we would be, just let us know, we'll come look at what you have. We can't guarantee that we'll buy Doug fir that has been dead for over a growing season, but we're still interested. So just let us know and we'll come look.
Very good. Thank you, Ren.
Okay, thanks, Ren.
I could speak to this other. bullet.
Okay, so go ahead, Kelly, on the Trinity River flows.
Yeah, so it occurred to me that with as much discussion there as there's been sort of over the topic of the flows and the lake levels and things of this nature, I approached Mike Dixon. I'd actually spoken with a few of the members of the collaborative about this, and I think there was a little bit of support for this idea. But Garrett, as we're dealing with resource management, it seems like water is a fairly important part of that here in Trinity County. And so I did speak with Mike Dixon about the potential of having him or one of his staffers give a presentation to the collaborative about the those flows, why they why they are doing what they're doing with the flows, and the impact it has on the lake levels and things of this nature. Obviously, it's also partly within the purview of the Recreation Committee as well. So again, if it's be the will of the collaborative group, we could schedule for our July meeting a discussion about those flows and how and why they do what they do with regard to that at the BOR level as well. So does that sound like a good topic for discussion? Is there support? Wait, I guess I should say, if there's anybody that's not involved or not interested in hearing that, could we get a nay? Otherwise, I'll move forward with that potential.
Any nays out there? All right, seeing none, it sounds like Kelly will proceed with getting that on the agenda for July, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, any other thoughts on agenda items for the July meeting? Seeing none? I believe that concludes our business for the day, unless there's any final thoughts, comments, questions. Not seeing any, so yeah, meeting schedule. Our next full meeting will be the 21st of July. And as we discussed previously, the next field meeting will be June 16th. More details to follow on that. Chris Cole, you are
just real quick. I just remember a while back, Eric Knapp spoke.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty interesting, and I was just wondering if there are any plans on him, or not, maybe not him, but maybe any conflicting opinions from some experts or any other topics like that, because I found that informative, and I like to think lots of other people in the group also found it informative. So if anything like that was up and coming.
Yeah, not aware of any, Chris, but good suggestion and maybe something we can explore.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Okay. Anything else before we call it a wrap? Huh? Oh, wow.
A little
We
bit early
actually,
today.
we got 10 minutes. All right, thank you all for your participation today. Appreciate it very much. Enjoy this beautiful Friday, Trinity County. No place like it. All
Thanks, everyone.
right, thank
You're
you.
right. Thanks, Jim. Adios.
Adios. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, no, I've thought about that, what Chris was suggesting. I don't know, if maybe Tara would have some thoughts on that. You know?
I could bring that up with her possibly.
That was, to be honest with you, Cal, that was, I don't know if you've had a chance to meet with it, but I mean, meet with Tara,
Not this, not for about a month.
but on this concept of, maybe